All right, so that being said, yeah, I'm Dan Phelan. Guess where I'm from originally? Yes, you got it, Wisconsin. So up in Wisconsin, it truly is the frozen tundra. I know how to dress to keep a body warm. If you keep your hands warm, your feet warm, and your head warm, you're pretty good. Well, plants are a little different story. And up in Wisconsin, I really never realized it because we didn't cover things up there. We just pretty much, hey, the snow covered it, right? And it was amazing, you know, like when you shoveled snow or snow blowed, you would hit the grass and it would be as green could be. You know, it was fescue grass up there. It didn't brown, it didn't weather at all with the cold and whatnot. So moved to South Carolina about 25 years ago, a little different game. Moving to Florida, it's a big different game. You know, you look at Florida, the Sunshine State, you're not supposed to have to worry about freezing temperatures or cold or whatnot. Well, in Nassau County, we do have to worry a little bit. And that being said, Nassau County is kind of a funny place too, in the fact that you've got some extremes. We live real close to the beach. When I jump in the car in the summertime and head over toward Yulee or out to Jacksonville, heck, the temperature rises anywhere from 5 to 8 degrees just driving across the bridge. And it's the same for plants, of course. So with that, I'll get into the slide presentation here. And again, like Taylor said, I like it to be more of an open conversation. We've got some people that grew up here and have been here all their lives and doing this for a long time that are probably much more of an expert than I ever would dream to be on living here and what it takes for freeze protection. So here we go, Florida freeze. Not moving.
It's frozen.
It's frozen.
There we go.
There we go.
Now it works.
All right, so introduction. We'll go through in this slide presentation, we'll go through the Florida Friendly program, types of freezes, how cold temperatures affect plants, preparing for freezes, and then freeze recovery at the end, if and when we finally hit spring. Wrong way. All right, here we go. Florida Friendly Landscape Program, the 9 principles. I've heard this since day one. We've been in the program, Barbara and I have, for a little over a year. We were in last year's newbie class and whatnot. And right away out of the gate, one of the things that was preached to us all along was right plant, right place. It's up there number 1 for a reason. Because if you don't follow that, and I'll give you a few examples where we didn't, it will get you. Water efficiency, fertilize appropriately, mulch, attract wildlife, manage yard pests, recycle, reduce stormwater runoff, and protect the waterfront. So basically, Florida Friendly Landscape is a collection of principles which are intended to preserve and to conserve water, protect water quality, reduce stormwater runoff, and create wildlife habitats. I can't see that little. All right. Right plant, right place. I've heard it from Taylor. I've heard it from Shirley. I've heard it from Lynn. I've heard it from really a lot of people. Joanne, our mentor, etc. It really is what you have to do. Do all plants need freeze frost protection? What do you think, Lynn?
Nope.
Nope. You're right. Right place, right plant, right place. And a lot of times you don't need it. So the other key thing that I learned by watching videos and stuff like that was the how long a plant has been around. If it's mature and has been in the ground a year or longer, it's more apt to be able to weather a frost and whatnot. So how do we select plants? We select them by size. We select them by sun shade conditions. Our backyard is a perfect example of that for people that have been there and did the tour earlier this year with us. We've got one. We've got a few sunny places, but not very many. So that's a key thing is sunshade conditions, salt tolerance. Again, we're close to the ocean, so we do have the effect of salt. Anything that's metal sitting out in the backyard, within a year or two, it's gone. And you can imagine what it does to a plant. And then moisture conditions, whether it's wet or dry. We are on sand, so we're dry more than anything for the most part. Drought tolerance, USDA hardiness zone. So here's the zones. What zone are we in? 9B, that's right. We were 9A for a while, but I guess about a year or so ago, we went to 9B. Based on temperature and trends and stuff like that, they reclassified us. So you really do have to, again, stick to the fact that, hey, most of our nurseries around here in like Lowe's, Home Depot, et cetera, for the most part, they sell the right zone plants, but you can buy tropical and that can turn into a disaster real quick. Like I said earlier, we learned our lesson. We went to Liberty and we saw this really beautiful Christmas palm, okay, about 2 years ago. We planted it in the summertime, early spring, really. And then winter came along, and 2 years ago about it was, where we had those 3 or 4 or 5 days in a row where it dropped down to about 23 degrees. Well, I covered the Christmas palm. Lesson 2, one of these newfangled light bulbs that you put in a spotter give off 0 heat. All right. So I'm like growing up in Wisconsin again. I screw in the bulbs and we shine them at our reindeer and all that stuff we have in the front yard for Christmas time, and the snow melts all around it. So it's like, well, heck, I'll just go buy a bulb like that, screw it in. And I did all that, pluck it under that Christmas palm, and guess what? No heat. We lost our Christmas palm. $80 down the tube. You know, at first we thought it was going to make it, but what happened, and we'll get into it a little bit on what it does to the plant with the cells and all that. Basically, the inside of that thing rotted out on us. It froze and it died. Now, another thing we learned was bird of paradise. Okay, we had a beautiful bird of paradise sitting by our garden room, and that thing lost the battle. I think Sue or Sherry, one of them, came over to our house and said, "Well, you got sticks in a pot for it." Because I mean, it literally looked like we stuck a bunch of sticks in a pot. No, that's a bird of paradise, you know. Well, that thing did come back. It's a beautiful plant again now, and it did recover. So that's something that could recover. The other one were our crotons. We lost about maybe a third of them. We had they're so colorful. They're a beautiful plant to have in your yard. And we probably had about 10 of them. And I think we lost probably about 3 of them. So
one thing I found with those is that if they get hit by the frost, just let the leaves drop off naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And then when spring comes, when you know we're away from the frost, you can cut them back.
Mm-hmm.
And they will
rejuvenate. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes too, like I'll scrape it to see if it's, you know, just a little dead or all dead.
Or dead.
I've had some luck with that.
Sure.
And sometimes they do die, but I found that I used to just pitch them before I knew, and then I found out to just let the leaves fall off, keep it watered, keep it protected, and then cut it back in spring.
Yeah, and those are all good points. That's exactly the same lesson we learned, because we pitched a bunch of stuff, and then after about a month or so, we're walking around the garden. That's a nightly thing. We walk the dog, we get home, and we take a tour of the backyard. Okay.
Inspect what you expect.
Inspect, exactly. So that being said, you know, we all of a sudden it's like, it's alive, you know. So point well taken. So these are the zones again. And we'll get into a little more detail of it on the next one, I think. Yeah, here we go. All right, zone map tells average annual extremes, minimum low temperature. So 9A is that, and we actually got a little bit warmer. I guess global warming is a real life thing. It's happening to us because we were reclassified as a 9B. So we're a little bit warmer, but that 25 to 30 degree Fahrenheit is about it. on the bottom end. First frost, December 15th, last frost, March 15th. Pretty good rule of thumb, but sometimes you can get hit a little bit earlier and sometimes it can last a little bit longer. It's kind of like hurricane season. You know, they've got a given a finite amount of period there that they call it hurricane time, but it's been known to happen other times. What it doesn't tell you on that map is it doesn't tell you a high extreme temperature. It doesn't tell you humidity, average rainfall, and drought days, soil conditions, or wind. And they all play into it, you know, like we go over to Sue and Jean's house quite a bit. They also live a little bit closer to the ocean, but they've got a lot less protection. And I'm telling you, it's like a wind tunnel through there sometimes. Most of the time, they get a really nice breeze off the ocean. But the downside of that is they really have to watch what they plant and where they plant because the wind will destroy it. So.
One thing I want to mention is a lot of, not many of the plants that we get at big box stores mention this, but 9A or 9B, the southeast is way different than 9A or 9B on the west coast. Yes.
Yes.
We have a lot more, I don't know if it's the moisture situation, like I always say for people, oh, but it's a dry heat or whatever.
Yeah.
Definitely things that are prolific that I see there, and it's technically the same zone, will not. And
Yeah.
maybe vice versa.
Yeah. So it does boil down to, and it's really that you've got almost that extreme in Nassau County. You know, if you go all the way out by Callahan versus over by the beach, it's two different conditions altogether. Soil conditions as well as weather-wise and what it's going to be affected. So, like I said, I've watched a lot of different videos on it because Barbara likes to watch. What's the guy's name from North Carolina? Who? Yeah, HortTube. Yeah. So anyhow, watching that, I'm like, well, that's not applicable here. You know, North Carolina it is, but it doesn't fit here. Some of what he says does, but very little because he's in a different condition. So you kind of have to weigh up what you have, you know, and if you do have questions, you can always hit Taylor. You can hit, you know, some of the people that lived here forever that, hey, what do I do? So, all right, here we go. All right, so we recommend using the Florida Friendly Plant app. I have not used that. I've used a few other websites and stuff like that. And after seeing the slide presentation and that, it's like, hey, I'm gonna have to download that thing and start using it for some stuff. It gives hardiness zone for each plant. I wish I would have put Christmas palm in there, although I didn't listen because I will tell you, Kelly and the bunch out at Liberty did tell us, you don't want to buy that, you don't want to plant that here. And it's like, then why are you selling it? You know, right? Yeah, so they could get $80 for it. They probably paid 20. But that being said, it also additional details. A good example is the fire bush. You know, it dies back when it freezes, and then it comes back. We've had some of those in our yard, and that's very true. You know, so that would be a real good website or a real good app to have on your phone. And use it as a good reference going forward. So anybody here use that? Yeah, we got a bunch of hands come up. So good. Why didn't you tell me about it? Come on, Joanne. That's your job. All right. Florida Friendly Landscaping. When planting and planting, microclimates. Lynn, you have something to say? Microclimate? Okay.
Like
All
the
right.
south side of a masonry wall, yes.
Yep. Big difference, you know, no. And Sue and Jean learned that. Where do we go? You know, how do we get out of this wind? Where can we plant it? So, and we did go to their house as well. So a lot of you guys saw and know what we're talking about there. Wind breaks, which again is like a wall or a fence or something like that. Try to get it out of the wind, and then sun exposure. And we're going to buy some of that at our house because we need a little more sun in the backyard. So that's kind of a little neat little picture that just shows you different things, you know. And of course, we all know sunrise is in the east and sets in the west. Our house faces the west for the front, and in the afternoon, evening hours, it's ungodly hot there. So we've got to plant the right plants, bottom line. And we've tried a lot of different things, and we've even tried some plants that say they're, you know, 8 hours of sun and love it, and they haven't made it. So trial and error, right? Types of freezes. So you get a frost, which you've already had this. We haven't had it over by our house, but I do know Sherry out in Yulee has had it. You know, she said, you've had it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That was the folks, didn't we get it all?
yeah, yeah. So it's here. Thank goodness that I'm not living up in Wisconsin anymore. We had a daughter come and visit over Thanksgiving, and they jumped on a plane Saturday and went back. And I monitor the temperature up there all the time because I've got 3 kids and 7 grandbabies up there. They are freezing their tails off already. It's an early winter up there. And it kind of is a little bit of a taste of an early winter here. I guess this afternoon we're supposed to have a cold front coming in, and it's supposed to dip. So yeah, that's cool. That's cold actually. So yeah, wow. Well, I needed a break from the heat, but I really didn't want to go back to the cold. So freeze warning. So 80% change of dropping below 80% chance of dropping below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so that's a freeze warning. And then a hard freeze, of course, is when it drops below 28 degrees. And again, we saw that hard freeze about 2 years or so ago where it dropped, and we thought it was going to be a 1-day thing, and it turned out to be about a 4 or 5 day thing. So, and remember, they don't have 9B on here, but 9B again is 25 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So. All right, types of freezes. You got radiational, which is a result of rapid heat or long wave radiation loss from plants. That's when the temperature drops rapidly, when you see that 20 or 30 degree change overnight. Frost forms when air is humid. Imagine humid air in Florida, right? Dry, wet, freeze damage can occur. And then you have advective, which is cold air arrives from the north. I used to, when I lived in Wisconsin, we called them Saskatchewan screamers coming down from Canada. Okay. We blame Canada for everything. Well, then I moved down here to Florida, and guess what? We blame the Midwest for everything. It's coming at us again. Well, other than hurricanes. Both can occur at the same time. You can have that rapid drop, and that's usually what kind of does happen. You get that cold front coming down, and you see that temperature change. And with the humidity we have down here and everything else, funny things happen with plants, people too. How cold temperature affects plants. Quick temperature changes lead to rapid cooler temperatures, leads to ice to form within the cells. And I believe that's what happened to our Christmas palm. And I don't know if the right kind of light bulb would have helped or not. I guess we'll never know, because I did not plant another Christmas palm. We planted one of these, what is it, a Chinese palm? Fan palm, Chinese fan palm, something like that. And that thing is big and gorgeous, and it grows. It loves it here. Again, right plant, right place. Many plants adapt to tolerate ice within the cells. So that kind of falls into that. If it's a mature plant and has been in the ground for quite some time, it's got a better chance all in all. And we learned that lesson. You know, we've been on the, what do you want to call it? Do our backyard for 3.5 years. What phase are we on, Barbara? 53 something? Yeah, actually we're on about phase 5. But it's just start here, work here, work here, work here, come back here, go over here. You know, you get the picture. And that being said, so we've had new plants and we've had to, deal with them a little bit different than some of them that have been there for about 3.5, 4 years now. So, but I can tell you ferns grow anyway. All right, so many plants adapt. That was the age of a plant. And that plants adapt well to slow temperature changes. That's the perfect world. If you can put a plant to sleep gradually over days and weeks, it's got a pretty good chance of adapting to it. It's that sharp, big contrast or change that really has a bigger impact on it. Quick change in late fall and early winter, which we're in early winter, plants are not adapted quite yet, end up with more damage. And then I was surprised how moisture plays into this. What they tell you to do, and we'll hit it on another slide, is they tell you, hey, you should be out there watering your plants before you know it's going to freeze. Get the ground good and saturated around it, and it will help protect the plant. So drying out plants also affects them. All right, preparing for freezes. What do? Plants may be covered with fabric, such as cloth or sheets or whatever. And I bought one of these. You can pass it around. I think it was Home Depot. They have them there. They have them at Lowe's. We 2 years ago didn't have anything like that. So we were using sheets. We were using blankets. We were using whatever we could find. Tarps. Some are better than others. And we'll get into a little bit of that on what to use first, second, third, and kind of what you should do last resort. So fabrics such as cloth sheets, quilts, plastic, or specialty frost cloths from the store. So the plastic part of it is a touchy thing, because if you do put plastic on your plants, the next day you want to get it off right away. You just really want to use it just because that's all you have, and then get it off, just like a tarp. Whereas a quilt, or actually when you talk sheets, a good sheet to use is a fitted bed sheet, because it's got the elastic in it and whatnot, and it'll hold on better. So, I mean, I'm out there with bed sheets and blankets and stuff, and I'm using everything from duct tape to bungees to whatever I can find to try to keep the things on, because the wind was blowing so hard. I mean, I guess you had to be there. I was. Go ahead.
Clothespins, old-fashioned clothespins like that wash line. I use a lot of those. It really helps.
Yeah.
Clothes.
Unfortunately, in our house, we don't have clotheslines, so we don't have clothespins.
Oh, I went out and bought it. But I lost my train of thought on that. Some of my plants look like what's it from ET? They look like ET.
Sure, all clipped up. Yeah, I hear you. The other thing I was going to mention is you don't want to wait on this. If you anticipate, you can't really even wait at all. I went looking for heaters 2 years ago. Forget it. You ain't going to find them. I went all the way to Jacksonville and they were sold out. These little barn heaters and stuff like that, gone. You just aren't going to find them when it's here. I mean, it's almost like bread and toilet paper back in the pandemic. They're gone. The shelves are clean. So, radiant heat from the ground gets trapped under the cloth. It radiates up and it keeps the plant just that little bit warmer, because you really don't have to keep it a lot warmer. You just got to keep it, at freezing or above. So try to avoid direct contact with the plants, because the fabric could cause damage to the plants or pull heat away. And again, that's one where in most cases, you should probably just go on cover them, unless it's going to be cold the whole next day. Just uncover them and then cover them up again. Additionally, providing a light, non-LED, Dan, don't go buy an LED spotter. It won't do you any good. Under each cover helps provide additional heat. And, I should have known. I remember, in Rock Hill, we had a well pump, and I had to hang just a regular light bulb in there just to keep it warm and from freezing. But I should have known better, but live and learn. Go ahead.
You can get, you can also get, they call them brooder lights in some of like farm stores and stuff like that, probably even over here in Ace. where you put a light bulb in, it can be white or red or whatever, and that produces a lot of heat.
Mhm.
In fact, you don't want to actually have it touch any of the covering.
Yeah.
So if you can't find it, it's getting harder and harder to find the incandescent lights,
Yeah, it is.
unfortunately.
So I found what I think is pretty unique way to save some special plants. It's a little expensive, but around the, say, if you have grafted citrus and you really want to make sure to save that, or I had an Australian tree fern and I really wanted to keep the crown warm. I have gotten those back pads that you have when you have a backache.
Mhm.
They activate when you take them out.
Yeah, good for like 8 hours, yeah.
Wrapped it in a little bit of moss, so it's not right on there. Put it up in that crown.
That's a good
or
idea.
wrap around the bottom of the citrus. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's thought of it, but I had one on my back when I was doing all this stuff. and I was like, light bulb.
Sure.
Can you restate that, Dan? Because there want to know what was just said about at least the alternative ways to provide heat.
So alternative ways to provide heat is like they sell at your farm supply places and whatnot. What was the a brooder type light, which gives off heat, but you got to be careful. You don't want it to touch the fabric or the plant, but it'll give you a heat source. And then another thing that was mentioned was these bandages you buy like for your back that you unwrap them, and when you do and the air hits them, they generate heat. Use something like a wrap like that. You could use something like that on like a plant or where you've done different things. So that's another heat source. So it's really just heat sources is what you're looking for. So
Dan,
yes,
if you use cloth, how long can you keep them covered?
if you use cloth, if you use one of the cloths like you buy, you probably could get away a little bit longer because they actually breathe some, but also keep the heat in. I would say unless it's going to stay cold the next day, I would be out there uncovering it and let it breathe and then cover it up again the next night would be the probably the best thing to do. Okay. All right, preparing for freezes, freeze protection, palms, wrap palm fronds in cloth, protect spear leaf. I figure a palm tree is just going to make it. Of course, a Christmas palm won't. But we've got some palms that there's no way I'm climbing up on them things trying to cover them. You know, plain and simple, and haven't had to. So, vegetable gardens loosely covered with mulch or pine straw, or you can lay a sheet over the top. But it's again short term. It's hey, if it's going to be nice the next day, uncover it. If it's going to hit you again a night or two later, cover it back up and just kind of sheet on, sheet off type of deal. Containers, move them inside, clump them together, or cover them with a cloth. And to clump them together is a good idea, but you want to get them out of the wind too. You want to, when you're clumping them, put them on the south side in the sun. You know, we're lucky we've got a deck that we can put stuff under. And that's what we do is we just take all our pots and we clump them together under the deck, or sometimes move them into the lower level of the house, depending on how cold it's going to get. Grafted plants, that's what you talked about. Typically, the example here is for a citrus plant, protected graft location. So that's where you could wrap it, like you said, with one of your back warming type braces. Wrap the trunk, pile soil around the trunk. So you just really want to build some insulation is what you're trying to do. Much like what snow did up in Wisconsin for us.
One thing that I always think about, like deck containers, I have so many containers on my back patio, and the issue that I've had before in the past was I got this great, fiddly fit on my back patio, and now that thing weighs so much, it's impossible to move. So I was thinking, like, you can get those great caster wheels that you can put containers on.
Sure.
Or a dolly is super helpful.
Yes.
And roll them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can move them inside the house super quickly.
Yeah.
To help give them that protection. But yeah, having that foresight to get Castle wheels on large containers, super nice.
Well, I'm lucky. I've got a wife that is as strong as I am. All right. She jokes about it all the time, like all the different times we moved in that. She always says to me, "Who was on the other end of that thing?" It's her. So if we have to move plants and stuff around, I look over and here she is carrying it, you know. All right, we have to do this. But a dolly is a good idea, so. All right, preparing for freezes part 2, mulching plants. 2 to 3 inches of mulch layer in landscape beds. Mulch helps protect against heat loss. It protects the roots and it helps protect for spring regrowth. So mulch is a good thing. And then what type of mulch are we not supposed to use? You remembered it. Yeah. Irrigation and watering. Water and land. I grew up thinking up in Wisconsin that more water is better. Okay. And I mean, I literally watered my yard every other day, regardless. And then of course I cut about 3 times a week, which was probably not the right thing to be doing. Down here, I did learn that, hey, part of learning in this is that you don't have to water that much, you know. So water and irrigation is an important thing, and in wintertime it is too. So it says water and landscape plants before a freeze is a good thing to do. Helps protect plant by warming the soil. It keeps plants hydrated because that's what happens when they get cold and freeze is they dehydrate. And moist soil releases heat much slower than dry soil. Go ahead.
That you're supposed to water it like a couple days before, but don't water it in like 24 hours. Is that accurate? Is there like a window to stop, or is that?
So you're gonna want to restate this question, but we do want to irrigate, make sure everything's well hydrated. But yeah, you're gonna want to make sure that you irrigate in such a way where excess water is removed from the plants. So you're not gonna like, oh, hard freeze is coming tonight, I'm gonna irrigate right before I go to bed. You're gonna cause damage to your plants.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure it's well hydrated and not in drought stress. So
Okay.
24 hours could be a good rule of thumb, but the biggest concern is that excess moisture that will cause damage to plants.
So the question was, is there a time period before the freeze comes that you should not water? And that time period, yes, there is a time period, and the philosophy or the whole thought is water early enough that the moisture, the water has time to penetrate and the plant has time to absorb. So you don't have puddling and pooling around the plant when the freeze comes. Okay. All right, so the last point is, you know, make sure you turn your irrigation off. Don't leave it run. Now it's funny because I went golfing out in Colorado in the mountains one time, and Colorado is a whole different game. So we're up by Winter Park, pretty high up, and we got up and went out golfing. And I'm used to going, you know, at sunup, teeing up and going. Well, you couldn't there because there's frost all over the greens and all over the fairways and everything. They turned the irrigation system on first thing in the morning to melt off everything, which I thought that was pretty interesting. Like I've never seen that, you know?
You can do weird things with Bermuda grass.
Yeah, you sure can. So.
I have a quick question here. All right, so it's raining today.
Yes.
Tonight's gonna get cold enough that I'm gonna have to cover plants. Is it okay to do that when plants like these, you have to do dry covering with cloth, not.
If the soil's irrigation, the soil's saturated, there's enough moisture, you don't have to irrigate. It's just more so to making sure we're not in a drought condition with our soil.
No, but I'm talking about like moisture by the on the plant itself, leaves and everything like that. It's still okay to cover it.
Yeah.
You're talking like breathe through it. Okay.
I was hoping he wasn't going to tell you have to wipe all the leaves off.
Every plant for itself on that.
All right, freeze recovery. So spring is sprung. Here we go. What do we do now? Plants lose water during freezes, irrigate to thaw soils and hydrate from the water standpoint. All right, be patient. Remove, we talked a little bit about that earlier. You were talking what you did afterwards, as far as, you know, let them do their thing and then trim off dead leaves and stuff like that. Remove dead annuals, prune perennials if needed. Do nothing else in freeze recovery. Stand back, hurry up and wait, right? That's what you really want to do, because you want to see if it's going to come back to life or not. It isn't like you have to give it CPR like a human that's down, you know, you just let it. Wait until the last frost after March 15th and then make your assessment. Look for greenwood in the spring. So if you see any form of life, let the thing be, because it's probably going to come back. It's like our sticks did, our bird of paradise. It came back. Fertilize? Nope. Stay away from it. Why is that?
Why?
Yeah.
We don't want to force new growth.
Okay.
It's stressed. So the forced new growth, that stress will be weak and it'll be more susceptible to disease, pests, and just not going to recover as well.
Okay. Good answer. Sarah?
Doesn't that also hold true, like where it says prune perennials? Really want to be careful about how much we take off some of the dead leaves and stems that from the frost. You don't want to force new growth. Promote new growth, on the same thing that we said about the first.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, thank you for bearing with me. Questions? We hit a lot of them as we went. Thanks for participating. It always makes it easier standing up here when people do ask questions and make comments.
It's a no-brainer, but I don't. You said turn off the irrigation before the freeze.
Yeah,
Why?
well,
Is it because the irrigation might freeze? 'Cause I
that's a
have-
possibility.
I have frozen faucets here.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I haven't had, knock on wood, a frozen faucet here yet, but up north, I put in a few irrigation systems and I had to put in an air hookup so I could blow all the lines and everything clear. And I actually had to bury all my piping and whatnot 2 feet underground, and it still would freeze. So I would think freezing would be one thing. And the second thing is you don't want the thing turned on and running water on it when you got freezing temperatures hitting it, because it plays into what they said about water 24 hours ahead of time. If you can, you just don't want to be throwing water on it at that time. Is that it?
About the irrigation system, we don't have that requirement, but in northern irrigation systems, there's actually a drain. So what happens is if your PSI actually drops below the threshold within your irrigation, so essentially it's not running, a valve opens up and it drains all the moisture out of the irrigation system so it doesn't freeze. Now, we don't have that requirement because we don't get those freezes, but if we had an irrigation system in Wisconsin, you know, absolutely, that's required by code, but we don't have that code requirement because we don't get those freezes.
And it's the freezing thing. And the other reason they put that in there is because, believe it or not, your irrigation system can actually act as a siphon and pull water, dirty water back into, if you're hooked up to potable water, you know, your city water, it can pull your water from your yard with fertilizer and everything else back into your potable water system. So that's why they make you put in that vapor break. So. All right, well, thanks for coming.
So, thank you all so much for coming. I did have one question that popped up. As farmers do with citrus, should we spray the whole plant? Oh, no, we're not going to do that. So is that one of the ways that we can do freeze protection, and we see this in agriculture, is if we have high flow irrigation systems right when that freeze is coming, we'll see this in citrus production as well as strawberries. If we can throw a lot of water on it at one time, that moisture will actually create an ice barrier on the plants, and it'll actually keep the fruit at freezing temperature. So right at 32 degrees, so it acts as a thermal insulator. Residential irrigation systems do not have the output capacity to put enough water onto plants to do that. So from a residential perspective, using ice thermal blanketing, we cannot do. But it's a great strategy in ag production. So you've probably seen strawberry producers or citrus producers turn on these high flow irrigation systems. Essentially, they're coating everything with ice because they can protect it. And you can do that like for the 3-4 days in a row and still maintain fruit quality. So it's a great strategy to help protect it, but it's not worth it for a homeowner. So that's a great question. So but anyways, I want to thank Dan. I want to thank you all for coming today. And I want to thank everybody for joining us online. And if there, again, we'll get this uploaded to our YouTube channel as a recorded webinar. And I want to thank you all for tuning in and joining, and thank you all for coming today. So thank you. You all have a wonderful